Sarah Martinez had always been curious about everything around her. At 22, she was the youngest xenobiologist ever assigned to the Deep Space Research Station Prometheus. Her bright green eyes sparkled with wonder as she studied alien life forms that most humans would find terrifying. Today felt different, though, as their ship approached the mysterious planet Zarian Prime. The Corvani delegation waited in the main docking bay. These reptilian beings stood nearly 8 feet tall, with scales that shimmered like oil on water. Their yellow eyes seemed to pierce right through human souls. Sarah watched from the observation deck as Captain Rodriguez exchanged formal greetings with their leader, High Priest Vorthak. "The humans honor us with their presence," Vorthak spoke in his deep, rumbling voice. His translator device made his words sound mechanical and cold. "We have prepared the sacred ceremony to welcome your kind to our world." Sarah noticed something odd about the way the other Corvani looked at her specifically. They whispered among themselves, pointing long clawed fingers in her direction. She felt a chill run down her spine but dismissed it as normal alien curiosity about human appearance. The research team consisted of 12 humans, including Sarah. Dr. Williams, the expedition leader, was an older man who had spent decades studying alien cultures. He seemed excited about this first contact opportunity. Sarah respected him greatly and trusted his judgment about alien civilizations. As they prepared to beam down to the planet's surface, Sarah packed her scientific equipment carefully. She had specialized scanners for analyzing biological samples and recording devices for documenting new species. Her personal tablet contained thousands of research files about known alien life forms. The planet's surface was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. Purple vegetation covered rolling hills that stretched toward distant mountains. 3 suns hung in the pale green sky, casting strange shadows everywhere. The air felt thick and humid, making it hard to breathe even with their environmental suits. The Corvani city rose from the landscape like a massive crystal formation. Buildings twisted upward in spirals that defied human architectural understanding. Strange symbols were carved into every surface, glowing with soft blue light. Sarah desperately wanted to study these markings, but the delegation moved quickly toward the city center. Thousands of Corvani lined the streets, watching the human visitors with intense interest. Their scales changed colors as emotions shifted through the crowd. Sarah noticed that many of them focused their attention specifically on her, following her movements with those unsettling yellow eyes. "Why are they all looking at me like that?" Sarah whispered to Dr. Williams as they walked. "Probably just fascinated by human appearance," he replied, though his voice carried a note of uncertainty. Different species often react strongly to first contact situations. The procession led them to an enormous temple complex at the city's heart. Massive stone dragons were carved into the walls, their mouths open in eternal roars. Sarah felt her scientific mind racing with questions about the civilization that could create such incredible artwork. High Priest Vorthak gestured for the humans to enter the main temple chamber. Inside, hundreds of Corvani-filled stone benches arranged in circles around a central platform. Burning incense filled the air with sweet, cloying smoke that made Sarah's head feel dizzy. "Honored human guests," Vorthak announced to the assembled crowd, "we gather today to perform the ancient ritual of the dragon's blessing. This ceremony has been part of our culture for 10,000 years. Sarah pulled out her recording equipment, eager to document this historic cultural exchange. She had studied dozens of alien religions and rituals, but never had the chance to witness one firsthand. This was exactly the kind of experience that made her choose xenobiology as her career. The priest continued speaking about their ancient traditions, while Corvani attendants distributed small cups of ceremonial liquid to each human visitor. The drink tasted bitter and metallic, leaving a strange tingling sensation on Sarah's tongue. She noticed that several of her colleagues looked uncomfortable after drinking it. "The dragon's blessing requires a pure sacrifice," Vorthak explained, his voice echoing through the temple chamber. "One whose life force is unmarked by the corruption of experience. In ancient times, we would offer our own young to the great dragon that dwells beneath our city." Sarah felt increasingly uneasy about the ceremony's direction. Something about the priest's words and the way the assembled Corvani were looking at her made her skin crawl. She tried to catch Dr. Williams's attention, but he seemed strangely unfocused, as if the ceremonial drink had affected his thinking. However, the priest continued, the great dragon has spoken to us in visions. It has shown us that the ultimate blessing requires a sacrifice from the stars, a young female from the human species, pure and untouched by our world's influence. The temple chamber fell completely silent. Sarah felt her heart begin racing as the horrible truth became clear. This wasn't a cultural exchange or diplomatic ceremony. They had been brought here specifically for her. The Corvani had planned this from the beginning. No, she whispered, backing away from the central platform. This isn't happening. We're peaceful researchers. But her colleagues seemed unable to move or speak clearly. Whatever they had been given to drink was affecting their nervous systems. Sarah realized with growing terror that she was completely alone among hundreds of hostile aliens. Corvani guards moved to surround her, their claws extended and ready. High Priest Vorthak approached slowly, carrying an ornate ceremonial blade that gleamed in the temple's blue lighting. Sarah could see her own reflection in its polished surface. The young human will be prepared according to ancient custom, Vorthak announced to the cheering crowd. Her sight will be taken so that she cannot see the great dragon's sacred form. Then she will be offered to appease the beast that has protected our people for countless generations. Sarah ran. Her legs pumped as fast as they could carry her through the temple complex. Behind her, she could hear the sound of hundreds of Corvani voices raised in pursuit. Their clawed feet clicked against the stone floors like deadly rain. She had to find a way off this planet. She had to warn Earth about what the Corvani really wanted. But first she had to survive whatever horrible fate they had planned for her in the name of their ancient dragon god. Sarah's lungs burned as she sprinted through the twisting corridors of the Corvani temple complex. The alien architecture worked against her, with passages that curved in impossible directions and stairs that seemed to lead nowhere. Behind her, the sound of pursuit grew louder as more Corvani joined the hunt. She ducked into a small alcove carved with dragon symbols, pressing herself against the cold stone wall. Her heart hammered so hard she was sure the aliens could hear it echoing through the temple. The ceremonial drink they had given her was making her vision blur at the edges, but adrenaline kept her mind sharp enough to think. The sound of clawed feet approached her hiding spot. Sarah held her breath as 3 Corvani guards passed by, their yellow eyes scanning every shadow. One of them paused directly in front of her alcove, tilting his reptilian head as if listening for something. After what felt like forever, he moved on to search elsewhere. Sarah waited until the footsteps faded before creeping out of her hiding place. She needed to find her teammates and get them off this planet. But first she had to understand what was happening to them. The ceremonial drink had affected the others much more severely than it had affected her. Perhaps her smaller body weight had made the difference. Moving as quietly as possible, she made her way back toward the main temple chamber. The massive space was now empty except for her unconscious colleagues, who had been arranged in a circle around the central platform. Dr. Williams lay motionless, his breathing slow and shallow. Sarah checked his pulse and found it steady but weak. "Sarah," Dr. Williams mumbled when she touched his shoulder. His eyes opened but couldn't seem to focus on her face. "What happened? I feel so strange." "They drugged us," Sarah whispered urgently. "This whole ceremony was a trap. They want to sacrifice me to some kind of dragon creature that lives under their city." Dr. Williams tried to sit up but immediately fell back down. "Can't move properly. Everything feels heavy and distant." Sarah realized that whatever drug the Corvani had used was designed to paralyze their victims while keeping them conscious. Her teammates were completely helpless. She was on her own against an entire alien civilization that wanted her dead. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the temple chamber. Sarah quickly hid behind one of the massive stone dragon statues as High Priest Vorthak entered with a group of guards. They were carrying metal restraints and blindfolds made from some kind of dark fabric. "The human female has shown unexpected cunning," Vorthak told his followers, "but she cannot escape the sacred place. Search every corner until she is found. The great dragon grows impatient for its offering." One of the guards made a clicking sound that Sarah realized was their equivalent of speech without the translator device. Vorthak responded with similar clicks and hisses before switching back to translated speech. "Yes, you are correct. If she resists much longer, we may need to damage her slightly to ensure compliance. The great dragon prefers its sacrifices alive and aware, but it will accept injured prey if necessary." Sarah felt sick to her stomach. These aliens were discussing her torture and murder as casually as humans might talk about the weather. She had studied many alien cultures that seemed violent or strange, but never had she encountered such calculated cruelty. As the search party spread out through the temple, Sarah made a desperate decision. She couldn't save her teammates in their current condition, but she might be able to learn more about this dragon creature they kept mentioning. If she was going to die here, at least she could try to gather information that might help future human expeditions avoid the same trap. She slipped through a side passage that led deeper into the temple complex. The corridors here were older and more roughly carved than the main areas. Strange symbols covered the walls, and the air grew warmer as she descended. The blue lighting became dimmer and more intermittent, leaving long stretches of near darkness. After what felt like hours of careful exploration, Sarah found herself at the entrance to a vast underground cavern. The ceiling disappeared into blackness above her, and the floor was covered with thousands of bones. Most were clearly Corvani remains, but she spotted other alien species mixed in as well. At the center of the bone field, something massive moved in the shadows. Sarah crept closer, using fallen rocks for cover. What she saw defied everything she thought she knew about biology and evolution. The great dragon was not actually a dragon at all. It was some kind of massive insectoid creature, easily the size of a small building. Its body was segmented like an enormous centipede, with hundreds of legs that clicked against the cavern floor. 6 arms ending in razor-sharp claws emerged from its upper body, and its head bore a resemblance to a praying mantis magnified 1,000 times. But the most disturbing thing about the creature was its obvious intelligence. Its compound eyes tracked movements with calculating precision, and Sarah could see technology integrated into its body. Metal plates covered portions of its exoskeleton, and glowing cables ran along its limbs like artificial veins. This wasn't just a wild beast that the Corvani fed sacrifices to appease. This was some kind of cybernetic enhancement or symbiotic relationship. The creature and the aliens were working together in ways that made Sarah's scientific mind reel with possibilities. As she watched, a group of Corvani technicians approached the creature carrying containers of glowing fluid. They connected feeding tubes to ports in the dragon's modified exoskeleton, and the creature's eyes brightened as the liquid flowed into its system. Sarah realized with growing horror that the sacrificial rituals weren't just about feeding the creature. They were about maintaining some kind of technological partnership between the Corvani and this ancient insectoid intelligence. The dragon provided something valuable to their civilization, and in return they kept it supplied with fresh victims. A sound behind her made Sarah turn around. High Priest Vorthak stood at the cavern entrance with a dozen armed guards, their weapons trained directly at her. "The human female has seen too much," Vorthak said with what might have been satisfaction. "Now she understands the true nature of our sacred partnership. The great dragon will be pleased to receive such an intelligent sacrifice." The guards moved forward with their restraints ready. Sarah backed away toward the edge of the bone field, but there was nowhere left to run. The massive creature had noticed the disturbance and was turning its attention toward the group of newcomers. For the first time since arriving on this planet, Sarah found herself face to face with the thing that was supposed to kill her. Its compound eyes studied her with an intelligence that was definitely not animal in nature. When it spoke, its voice came through speakers built into its cybernetic enhancements. "This human is different from the others," the dragon said in perfect unaccented English. "Her mind burns brighter than typical prey. Perhaps she would be more valuable as a research subject than a meal." Sarah stared in shock as the massive cybernetic creature spoke to her in flawless English. The great dragon's compound eyes reflected the blue light from the temple above, creating an almost hypnotic pattern that seemed to shift and move with each word it spoke. "You can understand me," Sarah said, finding her voice despite the terror that gripped her. "You're not just some mindless beast they feed sacrifices to." The dragon's head tilted in what might have been amusement. "I am Zixithara, last survivor of the Vorthak Prime civilization. These Corvani are merely the latest species to serve as my caretakers in exchange for the gifts of advanced technology." High Priest Vorthak stepped forward, his scales shifting to deeper colors that Sarah had learned indicated agitation. "Great. Dragon, this human was brought to honor our ancient pact. Her sacrifice will provide you with the life energy needed for another century of partnership." Zixithera's mechanical enhancements whirred as the creature turned its attention to the priest. The ancient pact allows me to choose how each sacrifice is utilized. This human's neural patterns are unlike any I have encountered in 3,000 years of feeding. Her brain structure suggests capabilities that could prove useful. Sarah felt a spark of hope. If this ancient being was more interested in her mind than her death, she might have a chance to negotiate her survival. What kind of capabilities are you referring to? Your species possesses something my analysis indicates is rare among galactic civilizations, Zixithera replied. Adaptive problem-solving combined with emotional resilience and creative thinking. Most intelligent species develop along predictable patterns, but humans seem to thrive on chaos and uncertainty. The Corvani guards looked confused by this conversation, clearly not understanding why their dragon god was having a philosophical discussion with their intended sacrifice. High Priest Vorthak's translator crackled as he spoke with increasing urgency. Great dragon, the ceremony must proceed according to tradition. The human's eyes must be removed to prevent her from looking upon your sacred form, and then she must be consumed to provide you with sustenance. Sarah's mind raced as she processed what she was hearing. The eye removal wasn't just some barbaric ritual component. It was specifically designed to prevent sacrifices from seeing the dragon's true nature. But why would that matter if they were just going to be killed anyway? The blinding ritual serves a different purpose than you've been told, doesn't it? Sarah asked the dragon directly. You don't want your food to see something specific about this arrangement. Zixithera's mechanical parts hummed louder, and Sarah thought she detected approval in the creature's stance. The human demonstrates the analytical thinking I hypothesized. Yes, the ocular removal prevents sacrifices from observing the technology integration that sustains my existence. Most species would be disturbed to learn their dragon god is actually a dying cyborg desperately clinging to life through artificial means. High Priest Vorthak made sharp clicking sounds of distress. Great Dragon speaks of sacred mysteries not meant for sacrifice ears. The ritual must proceed before more forbidden knowledge is shared. But Zixithera ignored the priest's protests, focusing entirely on Sarah. Tell me, human, what do you observe about my current condition that the Corvani fail to understand? Sarah studied the massive creature more carefully, her scientific training overriding her fear. The cybernetic enhancements weren't just additions to the dragon's natural body. They were replacements for failed biological systems. Life support equipment, artificial organs, and neural boosters all work together to keep something that should have died long ago still functioning. You're not getting stronger from these sacrifices, Sarah realized. You're getting weaker. Each feeding gives you temporary energy, but your overall condition is deteriorating. The cybernetic systems are failing, and the Corvani don't have the technical knowledge to maintain them properly. The dragon's compound eyes brightened with what could only be described as excitement. Extraordinary. In less than 10 minutes of observation, you have identified the core problem that has plagued me for the past 500 years. The Corvani are talented engineers, but they lack the theoretical framework to understand quantum biological interfaces. High Priest Vorthak was becoming increasingly agitated, his scales now showing rapid color changes that indicated extreme distress. This conversation violates all sacred protocols. The human must be prepared for sacrifice immediately. Several of the guards raised their weapons, but Zixithera let out a sound that might have been laughter. The mechanical speakers made it echo strangely through the cavern. Priest, your species has served adequately as caretakers, but you have never understood the true nature of our arrangement. I am not your god. I am a dying scientist from a civilization that collapsed while your ancestors were still climbing out of swamps. The revelation hit the Corvani like a physical blow. Several guards stepped backward, their weapons lowering as confusion replaced certainty. High Priest Vorthak's scales went completely pale, indicating shock or terror. The great dragon speaks in riddles, Vorthak whispered. The sacred texts tell of your eternal power and divine nature. The sacred texts were stories I told your ancestors to ensure their cooperation, Zixithera replied matter-of-factly. My species was exploring this galaxy when yours was still developing basic tool use. We established research stations on thousands of worlds before a cosmic disaster destroyed our civilization. Sarah found herself fascinated, despite the danger of her situation. What kind of disaster could destroy such an advanced species? We attempted to harness the power of a black hole for faster-than-light communication, the dragon explained. The experiment went catastrophically wrong and created a cascade effect that consumed our entire home system, along with our primary colonies. The ancient being's mechanical enhancements dimmed slightly, as if the memory required significant energy to process. I survived only because I was conducting biological research on this world when the disaster occurred. The cybernetic life support systems have kept me functional far longer than should have been possible. High Priest Vorthak suddenly straightened up, his scales returning to their normal colors as he processed this information. If the great dragon is not divine, then the sacrificial rituals serve no religious purpose. We have been killing sentient beings to feed a dying alien's life support system. The priest's voice carried a note of growing anger that made Sarah nervous. Religious fanatics could be unpredictable when their core beliefs were challenged, and she was still surrounded by armed aliens who might decide to kill her regardless of what their god preferred. The arrangement has been mutually beneficial, Zixthara pointed out. I provided your civilization with advanced technology that allowed you to become the dominant species on this world. Fusion power, gravity manipulation, faster-than-light communication, all gifts from my dying civilization. In exchange for the lives of our children and the children of other species, Vorthak replied, his tone becoming dangerously cold. Including this human who came to us in peace seeking knowledge and friendship. Sarah realized that the situation was rapidly spinning out of control. The Corvani priest was having a crisis of faith. The ancient alien was dying regardless of whether she lived or died, and she was still trapped in an underground cavern with no obvious means of escape. The tension in the underground cavern reached a breaking point as High Priest Vorthak's religious worldview crumbled around him. Sarah watched nervously as the Corvani leader's scales continued shifting through colors she had never seen before, indicating emotional states that her brief cultural studies couldn't interpret. 10,000 years of sacred tradition, Vorthak whispered, his voice carrying through the translator with mechanical precision. 10,000 years of believing we served a divine being who demanded sacrifice to protect our people. All lies to feed the dying remnant of a failed alien civilization. The guards looked to their priest for guidance, but Vorthak seemed lost in his own internal crisis. Some of them began backing away from both the dragon and their human prisoner, clearly uncertain about what they should do next. Zixthara's mechanical systems hummed as the ancient being processed the unfolding situation. The arrangement was never intended to be permanent. I had hoped your species would develop sufficient technological understanding to help me repair my failing systems. But your cultural development focused more on religious devotion than scientific advancement. Because you encouraged that devotion, Vorthak suddenly roared, his scales flashing bright red with rage. You wanted us to worship you instead of question you. You kept us ignorant and dependent. Sarah saw an opportunity in the growing conflict between the aliens. If she could convince Zixthara that humans offered better prospects for technological partnership than the Corvani, she might be able to negotiate not only her own freedom, but also the safety of her research team. Zixthara, she said, stepping forward despite the weapons still pointed in her direction. You said my species has unusual problem-solving capabilities. What if I could offer you something the Corvani can't? The dragon's compound eyes focused on her with renewed interest. Explain your proposal, human. My name is Sarah Martinez, and I'm a xenobiologist specializing in interspecies technological integration. I've studied dozens of civilizations and their approaches to scientific development. Humans don't worship technology. We dissect it, understand it, and improve upon it. High Priest Vorthak laughed bitterly. The human seeks to replace us as servants to the false god. She offers herself as a better slave than our people have been. Not a slave, Sarah corrected firmly. A partner. Humans work best when we understand the complete picture. We don't blindly follow orders or maintain traditions without questioning their purpose. We innovate, adapt, and solve problems that seem impossible. Zixthara's mechanical enhancements whirred more loudly as the creature processed this information. Your species achieved faster than light travel in less than 1,000 years of technological development. Most civilizations require 10 times that long to reach similar capabilities. This suggests significant potential for rapid advancement. Exactly, Sarah continued, gaining confidence as she realized the ancient being was genuinely interested in her proposal. But more than that, humans thrive on challenges that seem hopeless. Our entire history is full of situations where we refused to accept that something was impossible and found ways to succeed anyway. One of the Corvani guards made clicking sounds that Sarah's translator couldn't interpret, but Vorthak's response was clear enough. He asks why we should trust anything the human says when she is obviously trying to save her own life. Because, Sarah replied, looking directly at the guard, I'm offering to help solve a problem that affects everyone in this cavern. Zixathara is dying, which means the technological support your civilization depends on will disappear. When that happens, your people will face a catastrophic collapse of infrastructure. The implications of what she was saying began to sink in among the Corvani present. Their entire civilization was built on technology provided by the dragon. Fusion power plants, gravity manipulation systems, faster-than-light communication networks. All of it would fail when Zixathara finally died. The human speaks truth, Vorthak admitted reluctantly. Our engineers understand how to operate the great dragon's gifts, but we do not understand how to create or repair them. When the dragon dies, our civilization dies with it. Zixathara's head moved in what Sarah interpreted as a nod of agreement. The priest understands the situation correctly. My biological systems are failing faster than my cybernetic replacements can compensate. I estimate no more than 50 years before complete system failure. But what if you didn't have to rely only on cybernetic replacements? Sarah asked, her mind racing with possibilities. What if we could find ways to regenerate or enhance your biological systems instead of just replacing them? The ancient being's compound eyes seemed to brighten with interest. Biological regeneration was considered by my species, but we lacked the necessary expertise in organic cybernetic integration. Our technology was primarily focused on mechanical engineering, rather than biological sciences. Humans excel at biological sciences, Sarah explained eagerly. We've spent centuries learning how to manipulate genetics, grow replacement organs, and integrate biological systems with technology. Our medical knowledge might be primitive compared to your mechanical engineering, but we approach problems from completely different angles. High Priest Vorthak stepped closer, his scales now showing colors that indicated cautious curiosity rather than anger. If the human's proposal has merit, it could benefit both our species and the great dragon. But how do we know she won't simply betray us once she has what she wants? Because betrayal would be self-defeating, Sarah replied honestly. If I help Zixathara stabilize and extend life, then humanity gains access to incredibly advanced technology. If I betray that trust, we lose everything and probably make powerful enemies. Humans are practical above all else. We make deals that benefit everyone involved. Zixathara's mechanical systems hummed thoughtfully. The human's logic is sound, but her proposal would require significant trust from all parties. I would need to share technological information that could be dangerous if misused. The Corvani would need to accept a reduced role in my care and maintenance. And I would need guarantees that my research team will be released safely, and that no more sacrificial rituals will take place. Sarah added firmly, any partnership between our species has to be based on mutual respect, not fear and coercion. The cavern fell silent as everyone present considered the implications of this potential new arrangement. Sarah held her breath, knowing that her life and the lives of her teammates depended on convincing these aliens that cooperation was better than the old system of religious sacrifice. High Priest Vorthak spoke first, his voice carrying a weight of centuries of tradition. Such changes would require approval from the ruling council and the population. We cannot simply abandon 10,000 years of religious practice based on one conversation. But you can suspend the immediate ritual while the proposal is properly evaluated, Zixathara pointed out. The human and her companions could remain as guests rather than sacrifices while negotiations proceed. Sarah felt a surge of hope. It wasn't complete freedom, but it was a chance for survival and potentially something much more significant. If she could really help save this ancient being's life while establishing peaceful relations between humans and Corvani, it would be the most important first contact event in human history. There is one condition I must insist upon, Zixathara continued. If the human's biological expertise proves insufficient to solve my deterioration problem, she must accept that the original sacrificial arrangement will resume. I will not die slowly while false hope prolongs everyone's suffering. Sarah nodded solemnly. I understand and accept those terms, but I want you to understand something about humans in return. We don't give up easily, and we're very good at finding solutions that nobody else thought were possible. 3 days had passed since the confrontation in the underground cavern, and Sarah found herself in a situation she had never imagined possible. Instead of being sacrificed to an alien dragon god, she was now working as a consulting xenobiologist in the most advanced laboratory she had ever seen. The Corvani had moved her research team to comfortable quarters in the temple complex while their ruling council debated the proposed changes to their ancient traditions. Dr. Williams and the others had recovered from the ceremonial drugs, though they remained under constant guard and were not allowed to leave the temple grounds. Sarah spent her days in Zixthara's underground laboratory, a vast space filled with technology that made human science look like children playing with toys. Holographic displays showed three-dimensional models of biological systems that could be manipulated with thought commands. Scanning devices could analyze matter down to the subatomic level in seconds. Your species' approach to biological modification is fascinatingly crude, yet effective, Zixthara commented as Sarah studied readouts from the dragon's failing organic systems. You use brute force genetic manipulation where we would employ elegant quantum field adjustments. Sometimes brute force works better, Sarah replied, highlighting areas of particular interest on the biological scans. Your cellular regeneration systems are shutting down because they're trying to integrate with cybernetic components using incompatible interface protocols. Human medicine would approach this by modifying the biological systems to be more compatible rather than trying to force perfect integration. The ancient being's compound eyes focused on the display data Sarah was indicating. Explain this concept of biological modification for compatibility. Sarah pulled up comparison charts showing human medical techniques alongside the dragon's current cybernetic integration. We learned that sometimes you have to change the organic components to work better with artificial ones. Gene therapy, tissue engineering, synthetic biology, all focused on making biology more adaptable rather than more perfect. My species pursued perfection in all things, Zixthara admitted. Perhaps that philosophical approach contributed to our downfall. We could not accept imperfect solutions, even when they might have been more practical. Over the past few days, Sarah had learned more about the ancient alien civilization than any human had ever known about a non-terrestrial species. The Vorthak Prime had been master engineers who built incredible machines but had neglected biological sciences. When their homeworld was destroyed, survivors like Zixthara found themselves with powerful technology, but no understanding of how to maintain their own failing bodies. I've been thinking about your cellular breakdown patterns, Sarah said, calling up a new set of data displays. The degradation follows predictable pathways that human medicine has dealt with in aging research. What if we could introduce modified stem cells that would bridge the gap between your biological and cybernetic systems? Zixthara's mechanical enhancements hummed with increased activity as the ancient being processed this suggestion. Stem cell therapy was attempted by my people, but we could not solve the rejection problems. Foreign biological material was always identified and destroyed by immune responses. That's where human innovation comes in, Sarah explained excitedly. We learned to modify immune systems rather than trying to create perfect biological matches. If we could temporarily suppress your immune responses and introduce specially modified human stem cells, they might be able to establish stable interfaces with your cybernetic components. The dragon was quiet for several minutes, running calculations that made the laboratory's computers work at maximum capacity. Finally, the ancient being spoke with what Sarah had learned to recognize as cautious optimism. The theoretical framework is sound but extremely risky. Immune suppression could leave me vulnerable to infections or other biological threats. Modified human stem cells might create unexpected interactions with my existing systems. All medical treatments involve risks, Sarah agreed, but the alternative is certain death within 50 years. At least this approach offers a possibility of extended survival and potentially improved quality of life. As they worked together, Sarah had begun to understand that Zixthara wasn't just fighting biological failure. The ancient alien was fighting loneliness, despair, and the weight of being the last survivor of an entire civilization. The dragon had watched species rise and fall while remaining trapped in a decaying body, dependent on primitive caretakers who worshipped rather than understood. "There is another consideration," Zixthera said suddenly. "If this treatment succeeds, I will be partially human in my cellular composition. This would create an unprecedented biological hybrid with unknown capabilities and limitations." Sarah felt a thrill of scientific excitement mixed with appropriate caution. The implications are staggering but not necessarily dangerous. Human-alien biological integration could open up possibilities that neither species could achieve alone, or it could create something that neither species can control or understand. The dragon replied, "My people were destroyed by an experiment that exceeded our ability to predict consequences." Before Sarah could respond, an alarm began echoing through the laboratory. The holographic displays immediately switched to security feeds, showing the temple's main entrance. High Priest Vorthak was approaching with a large group of Corvani officials, their scales showing colors that indicated urgent agitation. "The ruling council has reached a decision," Zixthera announced grimly. "We are about to learn whether your research continues or whether the traditional sacrificial rituals resume." Sarah felt her stomach drop as she realized how much was at stake in the next few minutes. Not just her life and the lives of her teammates, but potentially the future relationship between humanity and an advanced alien civilization. High Priest Vorthak entered the laboratory with 12 other Corvani, wearing elaborate ceremonial robes. Their scales showed a mixture of colors that Sarah had learned indicated complex emotional states involving duty, fear, and reluctant acceptance. "Great Dragon," Vorthak began formally, "the ruling council has debated for 3 days and nights. We have consulted the ancient texts, examined the evidence of our technological dependence, and considered the humans' proposal carefully." Sarah held her breath as the priest paused dramatically. Zixthera's mechanical systems remained perfectly still, but she could sense the ancient being's intense focus on every word. "The council has decided that the traditional ways must be preserved," Vorthak continued, and Sarah felt her heart sink. "However, we also recognize that our civilization faces extinction if the great dragon dies. Therefore, we propose a compromise." The priest gestured to one of the other council members who stepped forward, carrying a ceremonial scroll covered in glowing symbols. "The human will be permitted to attempt her biological treatments, but only after the ritual blinding has been completed. This preserves our religious obligations while allowing for the possibility of technological salvation." Sarah stared at them in horror. "You want to blind me and then expect me to perform complex medical procedures? That's impossible. I need to see what I'm doing to have any chance of success." "The ritual requirements are not negotiable," another council member stated firmly. "No sacrifice may look upon the great dragon's true form and live. This has been law for 10,000 years. Zixthera's compound eyes turned toward the Corvani delegation, with what Sarah had learned to recognize as deep irritation. "Your compromise ensures failure while maintaining meaningless traditions. A blind scientist cannot perform the delicate work required to save my life. Then perhaps the great dragon's time has come to an end," High Priest Vorthak replied with surprising boldness. "If the ancient ways must be abandoned completely, then maybe our civilization should face whatever consequences await us rather than compromise our sacred beliefs." The tension in the laboratory became almost unbearable as the two sides faced off over Sarah's fate. She realized that this wasn't really about her anymore. It was about whether an entire civilization would choose evolution or extinction. "Wait," Sarah said suddenly, an idea forming in her mind. "What if there was a way to satisfy both requirements? What if I could perform the medical procedures without actually seeing the dragon's physical form?" Both Zixthera and the Corvani delegation turned their attention to her with obvious curiosity. Sarah's mind raced as she worked through the possibilities. "This laboratory has holographic displays and remote manipulation systems," she continued. "I could work through virtual interfaces and robotic surgical tools. The procedures could be performed without direct visual contact, while still maintaining the precision necessary for success." High Priest Vorthak's scales shifted to colors indicating thoughtful consideration. "The human proposes to honor the spirit of the ritual while using technology to accomplish her goals. This might be acceptable to the council." It would also provide an additional safety margin, Zixthara added with growing interest. Remote procedures would eliminate the risk of accidental biological contamination during the more dangerous phases of treatment. Sarah felt a surge of hope as she realized her suggestion might act. The ritual chamber was smaller than the main temple hall, but far more ornate. Every surface was covered with intricate carvings depicting the history of Corvani civilization, from their primitive beginnings to their current technological sophistication. Sarah tried to memorize as many details as possible, knowing that in a few minutes she would never see anything again. Dr. Williams and her other teammates stood in a corner under heavy guard, their faces showing mixtures of horror, admiration, and desperate hope. They had volunteered to stay and support her through the procedure, but the Corvani insisted that all other humans must be removed before the ritual blinding could begin. "Sarah, you don't have to do this," Dr. Williams said urgently. "We can find another way. We can call for rescue, negotiate differently, something other than this barbaric ceremony." "There is no other way," Sarah replied, surprised by how calm her voice sounded. "If I don't try this, Zixthara dies and takes all that incredible knowledge with him. Humanity loses the chance to learn from a civilization that was exploring the galaxy when our ancestors were still living in caves." High Priest Vorthak approached, carrying an ornate surgical instrument that looked like a cross between a scalpel and a laser pointer. The blade was made from some kind of crystal that seemed to bend light around itself, creating an unsettling visual effect. "The ritual blade has been blessed according to ancient tradition," Vorthak explained as he prepared the ceremonial tools. "It will remove sight cleanly and precisely, causing minimal damage to surrounding tissues. Our medical technology can reverse the procedure if you succeed in your mission." Sarah nodded, trying not to think about what would happen if she failed. The Corvani had assured her that their surgical techniques were incredibly advanced, but she would be trusting her eyesight to aliens whose idea of medical treatment included sacrificial rituals. "The human's courage honors both our species." Zixthara's voice echoed through speakers built into the chamber walls. The ancient dragon was monitoring the proceedings from the laboratory below. "I have spent the past day optimizing the remote surgical systems for human neural interface patterns. The equipment will respond to your thoughts and muscle movements as naturally as your own hands." "How can you be sure?" Sarah asked, genuinely curious about the technology that would soon be her only connection to the world around her. "Because I have been studying human neural patterns since your species first achieved interstellar travel," Zixthara replied. "My civilization monitored dozens of developing species, and humans always stood out for your unusual brain plasticity. You adapt to new technologies faster than any other species we observed." The ceremony began with traditional Corvani chanting that Sarah's translator rendered as complex poetry about sacrifice, honor, and divine blessing. She found herself oddly comforted by the ritualistic nature of the proceedings. At least this wasn't just random violence. It was a meaningful cultural practice that her cooperation might help transform into something more positive. "Are you ready, human Sarah Martinez?" High Priest Vorthak asked formally. "I'm ready," Sarah replied, lying down on the ceremonial platform and closing her eyes. "But I want everyone here to remember that this is the last time humans and Corvani meet as strangers. After today, we'll either be allies working together, or we'll have learned that some cultural differences can't be bridged." The crystal blade was surprisingly warm against her skin, and she felt a brief tingling sensation as it made contact with her eyelids. Then everything went dark in a way that was deeper and more complete than simply closing her eyes. The surgical precision was remarkable. She felt no pain, just a strange disconnection from her visual senses. "The ritual is complete," Vorthak announced. "The human sacrifice has been properly prepared according to ancient law. Great Dragon, she is now ready to attempt the medical procedures that may save your life. And I am ready to guide her through the process," Zixthara responded. "Human Sarah, can you hear the neural interface activating?" Sarah concentrated on the sounds around her and gradually became aware of new sensations. It felt like having additional limbs that responded to her thoughts, phantom hands that could manipulate objects she couldn't see. The laboratory's remote systems were connecting to her nervous system through some kind of wireless interface. "I can feel the equipment responding," she said with growing confidence. "It's like having robot arms that I can control with my mind. This is actually incredible technology." Your brain activity suggests successful integration with the control systems, Zixathara confirmed. Now we begin the first phase of treatment. You will need to prepare modified stem cell cultures using the genetic samples we discussed. For the next several hours, Sarah worked with technology that seemed like magic compared to human medical equipment. The remote manipulators allowed her to perform procedures with precision that would have been impossible with human hands. She could feel molecular-level feedback through the neural interface, sensing chemical reactions and cellular responses as if they were happening in her own body. The stem cell modifications are complete, she announced after what felt like days, but had probably been only a few hours. Human cellular regeneration factors have been successfully integrated with compatibility markers for your cybernetic systems. Excellent. Now comes the most dangerous phase, Zixathara warned. We must temporarily shut down my immune systems while introducing the modified cells. If anything goes wrong during this period, both the treatment and my life will be lost. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a physical burden. She was about to perform experimental surgery on a being whose death would doom an entire civilization. The neural interface allowed her to sense Zixathara's biological systems in real time, and she could feel the ancient alien's strength slowly fading with each passing moment. Beginning immune suppression protocol, she announced, manipulating controls that would have taken her years to understand without the neural interface. The technology seemed to translate her intentions directly into precise actions. For several tense minutes, Zixathara's vital signs fluctuated wildly as the immune suppression took effect. Sarah monitored dozens of biological indicators simultaneously, making constant adjustments to keep the ancient being stable while creating the window of opportunity needed for cellular integration. Immune systems at minimum safe levels, she reported. Beginning stem cell introduction. Now, the modified human cells flowed through injection systems that delivered them directly to the interface points between Zixathara's biological and cybernetic components. Sarah watched through sensors that showed her the cellular activity at the microscopic level, seeing her work succeed or fail in real time. Integration is beginning, she said with growing excitement. The modified stem cells are establishing stable connections with both biological and artificial systems. Immune rejection responses are minimal and manageable. Remarkable. Zixathara's voice carried a note of wonder that Sarah had never heard before. I can feel my cellular regeneration systems activating for the first time in centuries. The fatigue that has plagued me for so long is beginning to fade. Sarah continued working for hours, monitoring the integration process and making adjustments as needed. The neural interface allowed her to work with a level of precision and awareness that would have been impossible with normal human senses. She could feel the success of her treatment as if it were happening to her own body. The initial integration phase is complete, she announced finally. Your cellular regeneration systems are now operating at 60% of optimal capacity and continuing to improve. The cybernetic interfaces are stable and showing improved efficiency. High Priest Vorthak's voice came through the chamber speakers with obvious amazement. Great Dragon, your vital signs have improved dramatically. The energy readings from your biological systems are stronger than they have been in living memory. The human has succeeded beyond my most optimistic projections, Zixathara confirmed. This treatment has not only halted my deterioration, but has actually begun reversing damage that I believe to be permanent. 6 months had passed since Sarah's successful treatment of Zixathara, and the changes to Corvani society had been nothing short of revolutionary. The ancient rituals of sacrifice had been formally abolished, replaced with new ceremonies celebrating scientific collaboration and medical advancement. Sarah had become the first human to receive full citizenship in Corvani society, though she had declined most of the honors offered to her. Your vision restoration surgery was successful beyond our most optimistic projections, Dr. Kethvar, the Corvani's chief medical officer explained as he removed the final bandages from Sarah's eyes. The combination of our regenerative technology with human neural plasticity has actually improved your visual capabilities beyond normal human parameters. Sarah blinked as light flooded her vision for the first time in months. The world looked different somehow. Colors seemed more vivid, details appeared sharper, and she could perceive depth and dimension in ways that felt almost supernatural. The Corvani medical technology hadn't just restored her sight. It had enhanced it. How do you feel? Dr. Williams asked from beside her bed. He had returned to the Corvani homeworld, leading a joint human-alien medical research team that was documenting the treatment protocols Sarah had pioneered. "Everything looks incredible," Sarah replied honestly. "I can see energy patterns in the medical equipment, temperature variations in the air, even the electromagnetic fields generated by living beings. This is amazing technology." Zixthara's voice came through the room's communication system, clearer and stronger than it had been during their first meeting. "The visual enhancements are a side effect of the neural interface technology we used during your medical procedures. Your brain learned to process information in new ways, and the regenerative surgery preserved those enhanced pathways. Over the past months, the ancient dragon's condition had continued to improve dramatically. The hybrid human-alien cellular regeneration was working better than anyone had dared hope. Zixthara was not only surviving but actually growing stronger, developing capabilities that neither pure human nor pure Vorthak biology could have achieved alone. "There is something important we need to discuss," Zixthara continued. "The success of our biological integration has created possibilities that extend far beyond my personal survival. The hybrid cellular matrix we developed could revolutionize medicine for multiple species." Sarah sat up in her hospital bed, immediately interested in the scientific implications. "What kind of revolutionize? Are we talking about enhanced healing, extended lifespans, or something more significant?" "All of those and more," the dragon replied. "The human Vorthak cellular hybrid has demonstrated remarkable properties: enhanced regeneration, improved resistance to disease and aging, better integration with technological implants, and most surprisingly, increased neuroplasticity that allows for rapid adaptation to new environments." Dr. Williams pulled up holographic displays showing comparative biological data. "The implications are staggering. If we can safely adapt these treatments for broader use, we could be looking at the next stage of evolution for multiple species." "But," Dr. Kethvar added with appropriate caution, "we must proceed carefully. The hybrid cells work perfectly in Zixthara's unique biological matrix, but we don't know how they might interact with normal human or Corvani physiology." Sarah studied the data displays with her enhanced vision, seeing patterns and connections that would have been invisible to her before the surgery. "The key is gradual integration rather than wholesale replacement. We could develop treatment protocols that introduce hybrid elements gradually, allowing each individual's immune system to adapt at its own pace." "Precisely what I was thinking," Zixthara agreed. "Your species' approach to medical adaptation could provide the framework for safe implementation across multiple alien physiologies." Soft chime indicated an incoming communication from the Corvani government. High Priest Vorthak appeared in holographic form, though he had recently changed his title to High Counselor, as the theocratic elements of their government had been restructured around scientific rather than religious principles. "Human Sarah." "Great Dragon honored medical colleagues," Vorthak began formally. "The Corvani ruling council has received a communication from your human government that requires immediate attention." Sarah felt a flutter of anxiety. Contact between Earth and the Corvani homeworld had been limited to carefully scripted diplomatic exchanges while the medical research continued. "What kind of communication, High Counselor?" "Your people have detected significant changes in galactic energy patterns that suggest other ancient civilizations may be awakening," Vorthak explained. "They are requesting immediate consultation with Zixthara regarding potential threats or opportunities." The dragon's compound eyes brightened with what Sarah had learned to recognize as intense interest. "Other survivors of the Great Disaster? I had assumed that my species was completely extinct." "Not necessarily your species," Vorthak clarified, "but definitely other civilizations that have been dormant for extended periods. The energy signatures are consistent with massive technological systems activating after centuries or millennia of inactivity." Sarah felt her enhanced vision, picking up subtle changes in the electromagnetic fields around Zixthara as the ancient being processed this information. The dragon was experiencing emotions that registered as complex patterns of energy fluctuation. If other ancient civilizations are awakening, it could mean either great opportunity or terrible danger for all younger species. Zixthara said finally, "My people were not the only ones to experiment with technologies beyond their ability to control safely." Dr. Williams looked concerned. "Are we talking about potential threats to Earth and other human colonies?" Potentially, yes, the dragon replied grimly. Some of the ancient species my people encountered were expansionist in nature, viewing younger civilizations as resources to be harvested rather than partners to be respected. If they have survived the Great Disaster and are now reawakening, the implications hung in the air like a physical presence. Sarah realized that her successful treatment of Zixthara had implications that extended far beyond medical advancement. The ancient being's knowledge and experience might be crucial to humanity's survival in a galaxy that was apparently becoming more dangerous. What do you recommend? High Counselor Vorthak asked. Zixthara was quiet for several minutes, running calculations and accessing memories that were thousands of years old. Finally, the ancient being spoke with a certainty that surprised everyone present. We must accelerate the hybrid biological program. If hostile ancient civilizations are awakening, the younger species will need every possible advantage to survive the coming conflicts. Enhanced healing, improved neuroplasticity, better technological integration. These could mean the difference between extinction and survival. Sarah stood up from her hospital bed, feeling strength and energy flowing through her enhanced biological systems. Then we have work to do. How quickly can we expand the research program? Very quickly, Dr. Kethvar replied. The Corvini government has approved unlimited resources for this project. We can begin human trials within weeks if volunteers are available. I volunteer, Dr. Williams said immediately. If this treatment could help protect humanity from ancient threats, I want to be part of the solution. As do I, High Counselor Vorthak added. The Corvani people have already benefited enormously from this collaboration. We are prepared to take whatever risks are necessary to continue advancing our mutual capabilities. Sarah looked around at the assembled group of humans and aliens, all united in their determination to face whatever challenges the awakening galaxy might bring. 6 months ago, she had been a sacrificial victim intended to feed a dying alien god. Now she was a pioneer in the development of biological enhancements that might save multiple civilizations. Then let's begin, she said with confidence. Humanity has always thrived on impossible challenges. This time, we won't be facing them alone. Zixthara's mechanical systems hummed with what Sarah had learned to recognize as satisfaction. The coming years will test all of our species in ways we cannot yet imagine. But I believe that the partnership we have forged here will prove stronger than any ancient threat. As alarms began sounding throughout the medical facility, indicating that massive energy signatures had been detected approaching the Corvani system, Sarah realized that their first test might come sooner than anyone had expected. The galaxy was waking up, and humanity's new alliance with the Corvani and their ancient dragon partner was about to face its greatest challenge. But for the first time since arriving on this alien world, Sarah felt truly confident about the future. Humans had always been at their best when facing impossible odds, and now they had allies with technology and knowledge that spanned millennia. Whatever was coming, they would meet it together.